Welcome back to the training room brought to you by Lionel University. This is the podcast for us, the fitness professionals. My name is John Bauer, one of your hosts. Joining me as always is my co-host, the amazing Dr. Erin Nitschke. Dr. Erin, how are you doing today?
How are you, John?
I am really good. This is going to be another HIIT session, HIIT, high impact insights for trainers. Today we are talking about recovery. Why is recovery part of the program? So let's start with what it is. Dr. Erin, if you can kind of describe what recovery is and what it means for us.
Sure. Yeah. Recovery is the process by which the body just repairs the damage that's being done, the damage that occurs from training, and so that the body can then come back stronger than it
Yeah,
was before.
yeah. And I like calling exercise like a form of stress on the body, right?
Yes.
And there's lots of different forms of stress on the body. So then recovery ends up being our way of managing that stress. Because if we get to a point where we've got more stress than recovery happening, then now we have more stress than our body can cope with. And now things aren't happening the way that we want, right? We're
Right.
fatigued. We're not getting stronger. Maybe we're getting weaker. We're not getting the results that we want. So when it comes to recovery and why is it part of the program, it's because it's a necessary part of the program, just like all the other parts of an exercise or wellness program. The recovery part is really, at the end of the day, the part where we actually have the results happen. Because
Yeah.
adding the stress doesn't create results. Adding the stress creates the stimulus that hopefully gets us the results,
Yes.
assuming that the recovery is there.
Yes.
So again, when we're talking about recovery, it's a way to mitigate and manage the stresses, but then hopefully use the stresses we place on our body as a way to adapt and get better.
Yes. Absolutely. Recovery is, I like to think of it as it's actually the result because you're not getting stronger during the workout or during the set. You get stronger in the 48 hours after the
That's right.
session.
That's right. And another way that I like to look at it, and then let me know your take on it, is the questions that I hear about recovery is like, what should I do for recovery? Or how much recovery should I do? And I think the dose that you need is dependent on the dose of stress that you put on your body. If
Yes.
you just ran a marathon today, that's a large dose of stress, right? So then the dose of recovery that you would need might be greater. And then the types of recovery you might do might be various because, again, that's a marathon, at least for me, would be a
Yeah.
ton of stress on the body. Whereas if you just played on your like weekend rec softball team and you just had a game, you might be fine, right? You might be fine.
Yes.
You might not, you just need a good night of sleep. Again, when we're talking about recovery, as professionals, I think it makes sense for us to be able to talk about the different types that are out there and maybe how much is necessary. And again, I think it depends on how much stress you've taken on. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I totally agree. It should be proportional to the stress that you've put on the body that dictates what recovery looks like. And I also think there's a compounding effect of poor recovery. Like we can actually do it poorly and we underappreciate that there is this quality piece to recovery. Like one bad night of sleep is not going to kill your progress, but chronically poor sleep and poor recovery and chronically high stress and chronically undertimed, say, rest between sessions, that just basically is a recipe to create a plateau and honestly, maybe even an injury.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've already covered why it matters, but just to put it real plainly, do you like progress? Do you like positive results? If you're into those things, then recovery has to be a piece of the programming and certainly something that we should talk about with our clientele. One other thing and question for you when we're talking about recovery, obviously we're trying to recover from physical activity, but what sort of other stresses might we want to consider, I guess, when we're trying to talk about recovery with our clients?
Yeah, I think also just general life stress, like what is going on in a person's life. I always like to ask clients, like, how's your sleep? How's your stress level? Those answers change what I program entirely. So it isn't just the physical stress. There's emotional stress, there's mental stress, there's work stress, there's all those things. And it's important to have an inventory of what is going on with your client and ways for you to help them mitigate that stress through various types of recovery. And when we say recovery, we're not just talking about sleep. There are other forms of recovery as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And you alluded to there's many different types of stressors, partially because I asked you about it, but although there's different categories of types of stress, physical, emotional, and then we can do a bunch of subcategories, the body's response to stress is more or less the same, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So depending on the stress, whether it be anxiety, which is psychological stress, or like I said earlier, you run a marathon, there's going to be a stress response. So one thing we can count on is that whether again it's psychological or physical, the stress response is going to be the same. So then for taking that into account, we if we have good habits like good nutrition, good sleep, that is a big part of mitigating the stresses that we're bringing onto our body. So let's talk about where trainers get recovery wrong, and I'll start us off. In the last few years, recovery has been a buzzword in the industry. If you go to the big conferences that you and I go to, oftentimes you start to see all these recovery products.
Mhm.
It's kind of like they have a product and now they're like, this is a recovery treadmill. And I don't know. I don't know if it's a recovery treadmill or we're just doing a little bit of marketing. But I think a lot of us are attracted to that marketing and all these really cool recovery products. But just like with exercise, I think we want to make sure that we're mastering the basics,
Yeah.
right? There's
Mhm.
all these cool things like red light therapy and cold plunge and sauna and percussion and vibration and all this stuff. It's all really cool. I'm fascinated by all of it.
Mhm.
I've done all of it, but none of that would help me if I was not going to sleep at night, right?
Yes, 100%. I think there's ignoring what I like to think of as the big 3 outside the gym, the physical stress. It's the sleep, it's the nutrition, and it's the lifestyle. Those aren't accessories to training. They're the environment in which recovery either happens or it doesn't. So you can have all of these great tools. You can have red light therapy, you can have vibration plates, you can have all of these things. But if those 3 core pieces that are central to your body's ability to navigate and manage stress are not handled, none of those tools are going to make a bit of difference.
That's right. That's right. And one maybe practical example, and I know I experience this with clients, is sometimes I'd have a client come in and they're stressed and they're fatigued
Yeah.
and they're just feeling a little beat up from life. And we could do a really hard traditional workout. We could. But maybe in that instance, maybe you're piling stress on top of stress, right?
Yes.
So maybe we can do some sort of physical activity that's a little bit more fun, right? And then we still get the benefit of doing some physical activity, but maybe helping our client to de-stress from whatever they've got going on in their life. And I can tell you from my experience, that is something that a lot of your clients will really appreciate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another practical way to approach recovery is like program your rest days like program training days, but with intention. So that might mean something like an active recovery. It might mean mobility work. It might mean a walk. It might just be rest, but it should be a decision and it should be in mind of what is the goal? What are we recovering from? And then I think it's important to monitor your clients beyond just the session itself and continuing to ask those questions like, how was your sleep? How do you feel compared to last week? And also learning to read their performance as an indicator for the need
Mm.
for specific recovery. If somebody is normally easily hitting, we'll say 8 or 10 reps, but you notice that they're grinding through 5, that's data that you can use to tell you, like, oh, this is saying something. There's a story here that I need to pay attention to. And then, like you said, being willing to adjust. So maybe you do abandon the hard training session in favor of offering a bit more of a gentle session to aid in not putting more stress on the client.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And to sum up what you just said, we've all experienced this. You have some days where you feel great.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like you feel like, wow, I'm 20 years younger. My body's moving great. My joints feel great, etc. And then there's other days like, oh, okay, I feel a little elderly today. It can happen.
Uh,
So communicating with your client, asking those questions that you said, how is your sleep? How's your hydration?
mhm.
How's everything? How's that? How are you mentally? All of that stuff kind of matters. And then one last piece, and then we'll wrap things up here, is some of the stuff is kind of trackable. You can track trends with a lot of the wearables that everyone has now, whether they be your watch or I wear an Aura ring, there's Whoop straps, and all of that data, if you're paying attention as a trainer, and I think you should, can help you to see trends and what affects your client, what helps them to have better days, what helps them to have days that are not so good. And then imagine the value that you're bringing to them when you can point out the habits that they can take on to have the good days and the habits that they can avoid to avoid the bad days.
100%.
That's a lot of stuff we fit in about 10 minutes. Any last notes on recovery, Dr. Aaron, before we get out of here?
I think just consider it a training variable. It's something you
Mhm.
can adjust and it's something that will help that progress forward. If it's absent, it will also derail progress or at least detract from somebody's ability to make progress.
That's right. That's right. It's not like a cool extra thing that you should do in
No.
your training. It should be a part of the training.
Yes.
Love that. Okay, this was another great HIIT session, HIIT, high impact insights for trainers. Thanks for joining us on the training room, and we hopefully will have you back here again to listen to another great training session with us. Thank you.